Good evening. My name is Michael Bode. I'm with a company called Polar Instruments. I work in our North American sales office, which is in Beaverton, Oregon. I'm actually a new employee, just got started about 5 months ago with Polar. As you could probably guess, I'm here tonight because the theme is encouraging youth into the industry, and I suppose I would be considered youth and just got myself involved with this industry. So for this speech, I thought I would just kind of address the topic as a whole and talk about my perspectives about the PCB industry in the United States, particularly with regards to young professionals. And I think that my perspective might be a little bit different based on the introduction from Steve. It's clear that I probably don't understand all the issues surrounding the topic of getting young people into the industry, but I'll just give you my perspective on it. So before I get into the main part of my talk, let me just give you a quick background about me. I grew up in Beaverton, Oregon, which is a suburb of Portland, and I went to school for engineering at Oregon State University. It's about 90 minutes south of Portland. And I really had no idea what I wanted to do in school, absolutely no idea. But I was pretty good at math, and I like to build things, so people said, oh, you should go into engineering. So I did. And the first year in engineering school, you have to pick your discipline, obviously. And I more or less grabbed civil engineering out of a hat. My logic went something like this. In the university brochures, all the pictures of civil engineers are outside. I like being outside, so I'll probably like being a civil engineer. That seemed to make sense at the time. Fast forward 5 years, and about $100,000 later, I'm standing on stage, accepting a diploma that I absolutely hate. That might be a little bit rough, but I had certainly decided that it was not the right profession for me. Unfortunately, that realization came about year 4 of my 5 years in school, so it was a little bit too late to change my mind. So I moved back to Portland in hopes of finding a job. Spent several months kind of drifting around, hoping that Google searches would tell me what to do with the rest of my life. And eventually had a stroke of luck. A family friend of mine had an opening in her company, and she asked me in for an interview, and that's how I came to know Polar Instruments. Polar is a company that provides PCB design software and testing equipment, most well known for their impedance field solver and PCB stack-up design software. And Polar TDRs are also the industry standard for controlled impedance testing. I absolutely love working for this company, and even though my degree isn't directly related, I'm having a great time learning about the industry and launching into a career which I think is a great fit for me. So that's my story in a nutshell, and hopefully it gives you kind of a background of where I'm coming from. So for the next 15 minutes or so, I'm going to give you my perspective about the state of young professionals in the PCB industry. First, the problem, how the industry is aging, the skills gap that is forming, a look at reshoring in the US, and second, some figures and opinions about the university education system in the United States. Third, my thoughts about what you can do, a discussion of internships and apprenticeships, and lastly, some final thoughts about encouraging youth into this industry. At first, I thought of doing some research into the industry here in the UK, and then I thought maybe it'd be more interesting for all of you to hear about what I think is going on in the United States. So I stuck with that. First, let's talk about the problem, which probably most of you are aware of. So the PCB industry, as well as the manufacturing industry as a whole, is aging. Take a look at this graph showing the ages of manufacturing workers in the US. Along the bottom are the years from 1980 to 2010. The colored bars show the percent of manufacturing workers in each of these age groups. Red is under 25, yellow is 25 to 34, green 35 to 44, blue 45 to 64, and the purple at the top is 65 and over. Back in the 1980s and up into the mid-90s, the ages are fairly spread out. But from the end of the 90s up until now, the percent of older workers is getting larger and larger. manufacturing jobs started to decrease, so new younger workers stopped being hired, and the workers that were left are just getting older. Today, the average age of a skilled U.S. manufacturing worker is 56. Now, the problem with having an older demographic is that when these workers retire, their experience and knowledge goes with them, which is extremely valuable. The engineering industry also faces this problem. I found some data here which gives a great view into the ages of engineers worldwide. Now, this graphic divides the world into 5 regions and gives the percentage of engineers in each of these age groups. Just starting is 0 to 9 years experience, prime timers, 10 to 30 years experience, and tenured, 30 plus years experience. In North America, the vast majority of engineers are prime timers or tenured, with only 9% having 10 years or less of experience, 54% prime timers, and 37% tenured. This is similar to the situation in Japan, with only 12% having 10 years or less of experience. Now, on the opposite side of the spectrum, China and Asia are skewed with much more young engineers and only 5% tenured. And this makes more sense as we've seen these regions grow significantly in their engineering efforts lately. Europe, the Middle East, and Africa are somewhere in between with a fairly balanced demographic. They have 21% just starting, 54% prime timers, and 25% tenured. Now, there are all sorts of explanations and conclusions. You could probably have a whole speech just on this kind of analysis, but for now, the main point I just wanted you to notice is that engineers in North America are getting kind of old. One of the threats of an aging industry is something called the skills gap. And this is the idea that as engineers and manufacturing workers retire, there won't be enough skilled people to take their places. And the key word here is skilled, because there could possibly be enough people that would want the job, but not enough people with the years of experience and the skills to get the job done correctly. The transfer of knowledge is important to all industries, but particularly in industries such as this, which has an aging workforce. Experienced engineers and fabricators hold a wealth of knowledge and decades of job experience. And if these people retire without passing on what they know, the companies and the industry as a whole will be at a huge loss. Another idea I'd like to discuss briefly is something called reshoring. And reshoring is the idea that manufacturing jobs are coming back to the US, primarily from Asia. My research into reshoring led me to informed arguments on both sides. Some people very confident that it is indeed happening, and some people with doubts. But the believers in reshoring think that manufacturing jobs are coming back to the US for 2 main reasons. The first one is the wage gap between the US and mainly China is closing. Wages in China are increasing faster than in the US, which means that manufacturing your products overseas isn't saving you as much money as it used to. And second, companies are recognizing that there's a higher value to products that are made close to consumers. Being closer means better and faster customer service, more flexibility, and more ease of customization. Theories aside, from what I've seen in the US, manufacturing is indeed making a comeback. Apple, for example, announced in June that their new line of iMacs will be assembled in the United States, something that hasn't happened in a long time. I had the opportunity to visit the Apple World headquarters in Cupertino, California last month, and as you could imagine, it was packed and pretty exciting. We pulled in to find a place to park, but there's literally nowhere to park on the entire campus because they're expanding their employee base so quickly. And not only is there no place to park, but there are cars lined up in all the no parking zones. The no parking zones are also full. There's actually a valet who takes your car and has to park it off campus. The Apple campus, it actually looks to me more like a college campus with hordes of young people everywhere. Now, not only are they expanding like crazy, but it was clear to me that they are combating the threat of an aging workforce. There were several other encouraging sites in Silicon Valley, like the jam-packed parking lots I saw at Cisco and the massive housing developments sprouting up all over the area. Needless to say, it was exciting to see that the economy in that area seems to be picking up. Growth and reshoring in the US is great news, and it also means that these companies will need to seriously encourage youth into their industry to continue and sustain this growth. Another interesting phenomenon related to the skills gap is a shift in a cultural perspective towards the manufacturing industry. And Steve sort of touched on this, but I'll give my thoughts as well. Over the last couple decades, high schools in the United States have made a shift from focusing on vocational schools to focusing on 4U universities. Students are encouraged that if you go to university, get a bachelor's degree, you'll end up with a high-paying career and success and money and all these things, which can be true, but learning trade skills at vocational schools also leads to great careers. And in many cases, you're more hireable right out of school. The shift away from vocational schools and manufacturing jobs can be partly explained by the existence of a blue-collar stigma. Our culture seems to view manufacturing work as old-fashioned and dirty or lacking status. Not only is this a dysfunctional view, as these jobs lead to great careers and create the backbone and infrastructure of the country, but it's also a dated view. I have a couple videos here to demonstrate just how much the manufacturing industry has changed. This first video shows the traditional manufacturing factory image, the image that I think comes to mind for many people when they think factory. All right, that's enough of that. Now, let's compare that to another video. This is a look into the assembly plant for the Tesla Model S in Fremont, California. And for obvious reasons, this is one of the world's most advanced automobile production lines, with 160 autonomous robots assisting the workers to produce 400 cars a week. This is the direction that manufacturing is heading. Many manufacturing jobs these days are highly technical, with machines doing the jobs that humans used to do, and humans having to operate and control the machines. These kinds of workers need to be highly skilled, trained technicians, able to solve problems that require creativity and critical thinking skills. Okay, so I know board shops are not that complicated, but from what I've seen, building a board is pretty sophisticated and certainly requires people that know what they're doing, skilled workers and engineers, to make sure that it gets done correctly. So let's talk about something else for a few minutes, which is education. The American university system, and quite possibly the university system over here, contributes to a problem of getting students the skills they need to get into the right career. Check out these pie charts. This is data from the US Census in 2010, and it shows how college students fared after leaving school. On the left, the percent of college graduates who have a job that requires a college degree, 62%. The other 38% are either unemployed or they're working in a position that doesn't require a college degree. On the right, the percent of college graduates who have a job in the same field as their major, 27%. That means that almost 3/4 of college graduates in the US are working in an area outside of their major. How crazy is that? Let me put this another way. You guys make circuit boards, well, most of you. Would you make a couple thousand circuit boards and then hope you could find somebody to sell them to? Of course not. That doesn't make sense. Well, that's kind of what these universities are doing. Each year, they're pumping out a couple thousand students with their specified degrees, and they say, here, go try and find a job in these specified areas. It kind of seems backwards to me. I feel lucky to have found a job that lies outside of my major, and many of my schoolmates were not so lucky. I can't tell you how many of them spent thousands and thousands of dollars on their music degrees or their English degrees or their philosophy degrees, and now they're serving beer or changing tires or don't have a job at all. My brother, who's absolutely brilliant, he got a double major in economics and political science. But unfortunately, there aren't a lot of jobs in those fields. So when he left school, he got a job making reservations online for a vacation home rental company. And since then, he's gone back to school for another degree in hopes that he will become more employable. Okay, so let's step back for a minute. On one hand, we have an increased need to get young people involved with manufacturing, to learn and soak up the experience of a previous generation before it's gone. And on the other hand, we have boatloads of college graduates leaving school with mountains of debt and degrees that they can't use. There's got to be a solution here. In my opinion, the best way to solve this problem, and one of the best ways to encourage youth into the PCB industry, is through internships and apprenticeships. Setting up an internship and apprenticeship can do amazing things, and it's beneficial to both the student and the employer. For you, the employer, you get to find good people and guide their education, allow them to get the skills they need for the job that you need them to do. It's much better than hiring somebody new because you get to give them plenty of training and have a chance to see how they fit in before committing to hiring them. And for the intern or apprentice, this provides a wonderful experience to learn about a profession before actually investing in the education. And it greatly increases the chances of finding success in a relevant career. Instead of getting a degree and then looking for work, why not find work and then see what kind of degree you need for it? I had 2 civil engineering internships in college, and they were certainly effective. They taught me that I wasn't a good fit for the profession. Unfortunately, I didn't have those internships till I was almost out of school, which not the best way to do it, but still useful. Now I've moved on and I've found a career path which I think suits me much better. Implementing internships and apprenticeships is a very powerful tool. And if your company is interested in attracting bright young employees, I urge you to give this a try. And as Steve said, it might not be as easy as I'm saying, but definitely worth a try to see if they like what you have to offer them. In addition to soaking up knowledge from the previous generation, young professionals bring a new, fresh perspective to your company. They may find a new way to do something or have a different outlook that leads to a more effective product. The race is on. All over the world, companies are looking for the next best way to develop a product, the next way to make it bigger, better, faster, and cheaper. Without an influx of new ideas and perspectives, the ability to innovate eventually diminishes. Don't wait until it's too late. So thanks to the ICT for allowing me to speak tonight, and thank you all for listening. At this point, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. No, I did not think that we were alone, and I had heard, just talking to some people at Polar over here, that I know that it is an issue over here as well. And I know that you guys maybe have a little bit better system with your apprenticeships, because I know the way that your high schools work, I think your students have an option of going into apprenticeships or going on to more university-type schooling. And I think that we have a bigger problem with that in the United States. As you finish 4 years of high school, you turn 18, and then most people it's, okay, now go to university. And I have really not even heard of the opportunity to get apprenticeships. So I think in that way it's different, but I think that's a really great thing to actually have an option for students to go for an apprenticeship, which is a great way to keep your education going and work at the same time. But I am very interested to learn about what the situation is over here, and I quite enjoyed your introduction about your perspective of the problem of encouraging youth.